Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and uncover the secret architecture behind the music you love. Today's tutorial is all about relating harmony to musical phrases. Whether you're analyzing a classical sonata or, trying to write the next big pop hit, understanding exactly how harmony interacts with melody is absolutely crucial. It's literally the key to making music that actually goes somewhere. Now, if you've ever tried writing a song yourself, you've probably hit that dreaded wall where your melody just wanders. It wanders aimlessly, totally lacking direction. It starts up, meanders around a scale for a bit, and then it just kind of stops. It doesn't feel like a complete thought, and it certainly doesn't pull us, the listeners, along. So why does this happen? Why do so many melodies completely fall flat, even when they're technically using all the right notes?
Well, the source text for this explainer, Robert Hutchinson's Music Theory for the 21st Century Classroom, hits the nail right on the head. He points out that traditional theory training often traps students into just writing a basic melody and quarter notes for simple vocal exercises. And the problem there? It completely ignores how harmony acts as the structural glue, the actual punctuation for your melodies. So, essentially, without understanding how the underlying chords shape your melodic lines, you're trying to write a compelling story without using any periods, commas, or paragraphs. Good luck with that, right?
Section 1. Anatomy of a phrase. Let's look at building musical form. To solve this wandering melody problem, we need to scale up from the micro to the macro. Much like building spoken language from individual letters to words to full sentences, let's start with the absolute smallest unit, the motive. This is your fundamental building block. It's literally defined as the smallest identifiable melodic idea in music, usually just 2 to 7 notes long. Functioning just like a single word in spoken language, it's the recognizable DNA of your melody. Think of the famous opening 4 notes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. That is a motive, a short, distinct idea you can repeat, alter, and develop.
Okay, so if motives are our words, then subphrases are our clauses. They're a bit larger than a single motive, but still not quite a complete thought. Usually we're talking about a 2-measured chunk containing 6 or more notes. Think of the distinct melodic chunks you hear in the verse of a modern pop hit. The source material actually points to Party Rock Anthem. The specific lyric, "Party Rock is in the house tonight," takes up a very specific 2-measure subphrase. It's a distinct melodic segment for sure, but it definitely leaves you waiting for the next part of the line.
And that perfectly illustrates how we arrive at the phrase itself. A phrase is the smallest category of a section that gives us the sense of completing a formal unit. It is your complete musical sentence. It takes those tiny motives and subphrases and wraps them all up into a really satisfying package. But wait, how do we actually know the package is wrapped? How do we know the sentence is finished? Well, in classical music, and honestly very often in popular music too, a phrase finishes with a very specific piece of punctuation.
Section 2. Cadences, musical punctuation.
Just like written sentences need commas to pause and periods to stop, our musical phrases rely entirely on cadences. A cadence is simply the musical punctuation at the very end of a phrase, and here's the kicker. It is driven entirely by harmony. The chords happening underneath your melody are what actually tell the listener whether an idea is just taking a quick breath or if it's completely finished. Look at how strictly these are categorized. On the left, we've got our inconclusive cadences, our musical commas. A half cadence ending on a V chord leaves the ear hanging. A deceptive cadence literally tricks your ear by going from the V to a minor V chord instead of resolving home. But on the right side, we have our conclusive cadences. These are your periods. The authentic cadence, moving from V to I, gives you a definitive, satisfying resolution. It essentially tells your brain, okay, this thought is completely done.
Section 3. Open versus closed sections.
Now let's zoom out and see how this builds into larger song structures. It's all about momentum, and there are 2 main harmonic states a section can end in. First, a section is harmonically open if it ends on a non-tonic chord, usually that V chord. Because that dominant V naturally wants to pull back to the home key, ending a section there feels like asking an unresolved question. It forces us to eagerly anticipate what's coming next. On the flip side, a section is harmonically closed when it ends right on the tonic chord, the I chord. That feels like a definitive answer. It gives us rest, stability, and a total sense of completion.
So how does this actually apply to the music we listen to? Well, whether you're analyzing Mozart or Michael Jackson, placing harmonically open and closed sections in the right spots is absolutely vital to the forward flow of the music. Verses and pre-choruses, they're designed to build tension, so they're usually harmonically open, propelling you forward. A bridge almost always ends on a massive open V chord to create maximum anticipation. But choruses are the big payoff, right? So they are frequently harmonically closed, landing firmly and comfortably on the tonic. A great example from the source text is the hit We Are the World. The verses and the bridge are wide open, pulling you along, until that massive chorus finally drops and gives you that harmonically closed, super satisfying resolution.
Section 4. Combining phrases together.
So now we can take these open and closed phrases and combine them to create satisfying, larger musical forms. Just looking at this sheet music from Beethoven's Piano Sonata Opus 2 No. 1, you can visually trace exactly how this works. Notice how those short motifs, labeled Mot 1 and Mot 2, are established right in the first two measures. Then, Beethoven extracts those tiny fragments, develops them, speeds them up, and builds a complete, continuous musical sentence that drives straight into a half cadence at the end. The harmony is completely dictating the flow here, giving shape to those melodic fragments and driving them right toward that conclusive pause.
Another incredibly common way to combine phrases is to create what's called a period, and this brilliantly highlights that harmony-driven question and answer dynamic we were talking about. Step 1, you start with an antecedent phrase. This phrase ends with an inconclusive cadence, usually a half cadence. It asks a musical question. Then, step 2, you follow it immediately with a consequent phrase. This one ends with a conclusive cadence, like a perfect authentic cadence, providing the definitive musical answer. When you pair two phrases up like this, you create a perfectly balanced period driven entirely by the tension and release of the underlying chords.
And honestly, here is where it gets really fascinating. The melody actually plays a secondary role to the harmony when defining these periods. A period can be parallel, which just means the question phrase and the answer phrase start with the exact same melodic material but end with different cadences. But get this, you can also have contrasting periods where the two phrases begin with entirely different melodies. Actually, even if the two phrases share absolutely no melodic DNA at the start, it's their harmonic cadences, that open question followed by the closed answer, that physically lock them together into a single cohesive musical period.
So what's the big takeaway here? Melody just doesn't exist in a vacuum. It relies heavily on the structural pillars of harmony to actually make sense and go somewhere. Next time you're listening to your absolute favorite song, try to listen past the singer and focus entirely on those chords. Ask yourself, at the end of this phrase, is the harmony asking an open question, or is it giving a closed, satisfying answer? I promise you, once you start listening for these harmonic commas and periods, you'll literally never hear the architecture of your favorite melodies the same way again.